Quinn soon got word of what was happening in New York City. She was hesitant to send troops at first, but eventually gave in. General? She stood from her seat. I'm going in. Not so sure if that's a great idea, Madam President. I know what I'm doing. Get me my rifle. Quinn stormed out of her office, ready to fight.
Sentinel, I must admit, I've doubted your strength. But I've also doubted your stupidity.
Rogar floated gracefully from the Gar ship, followed by a few Gars and many Terrors.
You've refused to join us and doubted my loyalty in one day?
Rogar clapped as everyone else remained silent.
Really, that is impressive. You'll be the downfall of your own kind because of your actions today.
I'm expecting that to be more of the case for the Gars, Rogar. The Sentinel threw the box down, readying the shields. A silence fell over them. The clone army stood at the ready. The Terrors stared condescendingly upon the Sentinels, the Paradox Master and Vax. Rogar waited for the right moment as tension built up among all of them.
Do it.
Rogar motioned towards Conchna. Conchna pulled out a singular button remote and pressed it. Bombs across the city exploded at the base of skyscrapers. The Sentinel lifted the shields around his group, but one rolled out of the way of the shield. What are you doing? The Paradox Master yelled. I've got a plan. One ran behind a pile of rubble and formed a bow and arrow of plasma in his hands. He shot an arrow at Rogar. It flew past him, hitting the ground. The arrow exploded, pushing Rogar out of the sky and burning his wings. A few clones fell and the Terrors flinched. The shield lowered as the Paradox Master vanished. The Sentinel snapped his fingers, causing 2 small explosions in the clone army, killing a few and forcing some to the ground. The Sentinel fell to his knees. Something wasn't right. He was staring himself in the face, all the death. It was him. Rogar blasted a plasma ball behind the Sentinel, sending him flying into a pile of bodies. The heat scorched the back of his suit, and he felt a sharp pain as the back of his neck burned. A helicopter landed near the group, and out of it stepped Quinn. She held an Andromedan rifle. She pressed a button on its side, splitting it into 2 pistols. Quinn, what are you doing here? The Sentinel yelled, pushing himself up. I'm here to help. She fired at the clones and Terrors. Vax was hit in the leg with a stray piece of shrapnel. The pain sparked a flame in her eyes as her arms burst aflame. Conchna made his way to the Sentinel, hitting him in the face with the butt of his rifle, and his vision went black. Ha! Feels good to hit that face, Conchna laughed. Conchna, you don't have to do this. I know there's good in you. The Sentinel pleaded with him. You're me. Conchna responded by pressing the Sentinel against the floor. I have your brain, your mind. I see the evil in you, too. It consumes me. How do you contain it? Conchna, I can help you. I don't want your help. I never asked to exist. Conchna stomped on the Sentinel's ribs. The Sentinel screamed in pain, lungs burning. Vax ran to Conchna. She jumped in the air, kicking him in the face with a plasmatic flame trailing behind her as she landed. Sentinel, are you okay? Vax. The Sentinel coughed up blood, struggling to breathe. Watch out. Vax turned around, punching Conchna in the face. Her arm burst with plasma as she held it to Conchna's neck. Conchna demanded his troops. Get the Garstone! Lock him up! Alive! He jumped up, kicking Vax in the stomach, launching her into the ground. Vax! The Sentinel yelled, straining his lungs, trying to get up. He heard his bones crack. He couldn't get off the ground. He was drowning in his own blood. Clones from the army chained him up and lifted him from the ground. He screamed in pain. The more he screamed, the more it pained him, and the more painful it became, the more he screamed. He slipped in and out of consciousness as a feedback loop of torture twisted in waves inside his chest. Rogar distracted the Paradox Master and won. Vax could barely stand. Quinn ran after the Sentinel. A stray laser shot through her side. The Terrors surrounded the troops carrying the Sentinel. After the Andromedan ships took off with the Sentinel, Vax was able to stand. She ran as fast as she could to the Paradox Master. One was holding off Rogar relatively well. Paradox Master, you have to do something about the Sentinel. He's dying. You won't like what happens. Vax looked at him confused, pleading with her eyes. The Paradox Master vanished in a cloud of darkness, leaving Vax with one. One! She yelled at him as he pushed Rogar against a building. What do we do? We aren't doing anything as long as Rogar's still here, One answered back. Vax found the Sentinel's box and picked it up. She raised her arms, and a ring of plasma surrounded Rogar, containing him like a straitjacket before it solidified into crystal. She tossed the box at his head, and he flashed away. One returned to the ground. Where did you send him? I don't know, somewhere. He's gone. Gone? He isn't gone, he's just moved. Vax stepped back, holding her stomach. Her head swirled with confusion and anger. He could be literally anywhere right now, One yelled. Any time. And you just decided that was a good idea? A faint voice called out in the distance. Hey, I could use some help over here. Quinn! Vax rushed to her side. The first Sentinel ran to her side, pulling off his flannel with Vax in tow. Quinn, you've been shot! Yeah, I have. She laughed weakly. Well, I guess we all have our time. She winced as One held the fabric on her wound. Don't bother, I'm beyond saving. Quinn, what do we do? Vax cried. We trust in the Sentinel. Quinn smiled, trying to hide her pain. He's dying! Vax wiped away her tears. The Sentinel never dies. Quinn chuckled softly with her final breath. Quinn was right. The Sentinel hadn't died, not yet. Have fun with the new security measures. A guard spoke to the Sentinel. You'll be here forever. The cell door closed. I should thank you. This planet is a time prison. Because of you. Locked in an inescapable temporal bubble. The Sentinel groaned, and the guard walked away. Once again, the Sentinel was locked up in the Andromedan galactic jail planet. Still bleeding internally, he knew he would die, and so did his captors. They knew the only option was to lock him up until he died. He knew he would have to wait until he died or until some miracle happened for him to escape. When the sirens went off, he thought he had his miracle. The Sentinel sat up, as painful as it was, to see what was going on. Right before his eyes, an implosion sucked up the cell across from him. His eyes widened as another implosion sparked in the same place. Prisoners ran past his cell. Apparent wormhole-like entities were being created left and right. The Sentinel could only hope that they wouldn't kill him in the process. Another one imploded in his cell, blasting him against a wall. His vision went red as blood washed over one of his eyes. He couldn't so much as breathe without feeling a hot spike sting against his lungs. He looked over the jail planet's horizon, hoping that the pain would end. His cell, atop a high tower, gave him a view of all the other cells. This is it. This is the end, he thought. One more chance. The Sentinel looked behind him. He strained his eyes. Not even bothering to wear a cloak this time, huh? The Sentinel coughed up blood, his face drained of any semblance of life. The Paradox Master said nothing, cocking his gun. He stared away, grimacing as he raised his arm. He looked ahead to take aim, and immediately shut his eyes as he pulled the trigger. The Sentinel's vision went from red to purple as he was overtaken by the flames. He felt his bones scrape against his organs as they shifted back into place. He rolled over the edge of his broken cell floor and fell off the high tower. Time slowed as he saw himself plummeting to his death. He knew he'd been healed, but it wouldn't stop him from meeting his death from a fall this high. He closed his eyes. Is this the day the Paradox Master kills me? He thought. Before he could hit the ground, a wormhole imploded where he landed and swallowed him whole. The Sentinel opened his eyes and sat up as quickly as he could. He felt his face and hair, his ribs and arms. I'm alive, he exclaimed. You best be hoping you are after that fire, a voice laughed. Surprised you didn't go and die like the rest of us would have. The Sentinel looked around. Horses and stalls and barrels of hay on the floor let him know he had ended up in a barn. Where am I? Old Fairytown, Texas, of course. The farmer laughed, sitting on a bucket. Where's your brain, boy? The farmer slapped his knee. Where are my clothes? The Sentinel noticed all he had left on him was his smoking white dress shirt. He put out some of the few flames still lingering on him. Those done burn off in the fire. The farmer stood from his bucket, walking to a nearby workstation. What year is it? The Sentinel adjusted himself, covering himself with some burnt hay. Boy, you sure are out of it, aren't you? The farmer laughed. It's the year of our Lord, 1872. The farmer came back to the Sentinel with some clothes. He tossed them at him. Say, we've been in need of a new sheriff recently. The Sentinel slipped on his new jeans. Okay. The Sentinel shook himself. Last thing he knew, he was falling from the tower of a jail cell on a distant planet, and now some farmer was talking to him about his town's sheriff. Listen, I don't really... The town and I have been talking. We think maybe you'd be our new sheriff? The Sentinel stood, sliding on his new coat, noticing a sheriff's badge wrapped in a bandana falling out of its inner pocket. Why? He asked. You did just fall out of the sky, son, the farmer laughed. And on the town's founding anniversary, no less. The Sentinel was going to decline, but noticed his box was missing. I'm stuck in 1872, he realized out loud. Sure. Whatever, why not? Better than dying. Right. What's your name, then? The farmer asked. I'm the Sentinel. That sounds about right for a sky fella. The Sentinel laughed. We gotta call you something more personal, though, right? You some sort of space alien? You have a name? The Sentinel hesitated for a moment. He wanted to forget his name, but he couldn't think of a fake on the spot. Adam Jaminsky. Boy, you really are from another world. Nice to meet you, Adam, Jim, whatever you just said. Mind if I introduce you as AJ for short? The town might have trouble with a name like that. What did you say? The Sentinel confronted the farmer. The Sentinel's own voice echoed in his mind as he spoke it, panging with an intense familiarity. It's an abbreviation, don't mean to offend. How's it pronounced? Jam? Jim? No. The Sentinel looked away, then back. Do you have a mirror? The farmer shuffled away, slowly returning with a mirror in hand. He handed it to the Sentinel. The Sentinel ran his fingers through his new blonde hair. He stared at his face, a face he knew. He cracked the mirror in his hands, instead paying attention to his white shirt, his duster coat, bandana, his jeans. He held his hands over his mouth. I need to tell Vax. He frantically looked around the room, searching desperately for his box. I need to get out of here! A choir of screams sounded from the town. What in the hell? The farmer walked out into the street. The sentinel ran out of the barn, recognizing a familiar flashing sound outside. Rogar had appeared, still in Vax's crystal plasma straitjacket, and with the sentinel's box. What? The sentinel stumbled back. What is happening? You're confused too? The farmer yelled. Rogar burst from his restraint, spotting the sentinel.
You! Where's the sentinel?
You're looking at him! The sentinel yelled back, cracking his neck and flaring his fists in preparation. Rogar gave a confused look, and then flew upwards, preparing to fire back at him. The sentinel rolled out of the way, then ran toward the box, lying on the floor near Rogar. He picked it up, and had planned to flash away when he saw Rogar's strike hit a nearby barn. Watching as farm hands and animals rushed out, he threw his box up to his shoulder, putting it back in its mini-orbit. He jumped into the air, blasting Rogar with several short beams of plasma. The farmer stared in awe at the sentinel. Watch out! The sentinel yelled as Rogar flew the massive plasma crystal at the barn, smashing its entrance, scaring the animals. A horse ran from the barn. The sentinel jumped on the horse as it passed him, clumsily trying to pull himself up onto the saddle. Rogar took notice and followed behind. The horse ran across the flat desert as fast as it could, kicking up dusty sand as Rogar followed close behind them. Rogar tossed a small orange sphere, landing far in front of the sentinel. It opened what seemed to be a portal in front of them, leading directly back to New York. The sentinel tried to stop the horse, but it kept running for the portal. One and Vax sat by Quinn in New York as military and medical personnel arrived. For the time being, they'd assumed it was over. Vax sat dejectedly, staring at a dancing flame in her hand. A portal opened above the street. Everyone get out! One yelled. Vax, quick, come with me. AJ? Vax stood in front of the portal, watching as the horse drew nearer. Vax! One grabbed Vax and pushed her out of the way. The sentinel rode the horse past Vax in the crowd in an attempt to draw Rogar away. Rather than follow, Rogar went straight for Vax. Whoa! The sentinel pulled the reins of the horse and jumped off. Rogar smacked One and Vax down with his tail. The sentinel lifted his arm and swung it around. A whip of plasma shot from his wrist, and he lassoed Rogar and pulled him down to the ground.
Ah, Sentinel. What gives a human the right to be so adept with the master element?
Rogar growled. Vax stood up, confused. Sentinel? The sentinel held up his arm, pointing his fingers at Rogar like a handgun.
What are you gonna do? Shoot me?
Rogar asked. I don't know, should I? The sentinel pulled his thumb down, readying an imaginary weapon. Rogar laughed.
You're joking, right?
Vax, get out of the way. One held Vax's shoulder. What did he mean when he called AJ the Sentinel? Vax ignored One. Vax, get out of the way, please! One pulled her aside. The sentinel's hand recoiled with a blast, and a single shard of solid plasma shot from his fingertips. The shard struck Rogar's face and exploded. Rogar was sent flying. The sentinel ran forward and picked up Rogar's portal sphere. He threw it ahead of Rogar, and it landed before Rogar hit the ground, creating a portal. The sentinel jumped for the sphere and closed the portal as Rogar fell through it. As soon as it closed, purple spikes went through the machine, destroying its inner workings. One, Vax, and a crowd ran to the sentinel. AJ, Vax looked at the sentinel. Why did Rogar think you were the sentinel? Where is he? Vax. Where is he? Vax was on the verge of tears, holding the sentinel tightly by his shoulders. Look at me. It's me. Vax stood back, hand over her mouth and tears rolling down her cheek. One stood behind her, looking away. You... Vax choked on her tears. You phased? Again? As is tradition, the sentinel looked down at the ground, desperately trying to not have to look at Vax. He had to try not to cry himself because he knew what would happen next. This entire time, AJ's been... trying not to think about it too much. It doesn't make sense yet. Sentinel. Vax hesitated. The sentinel anticipated what she would say. He was ready a long time ago. I can't take this anymore. I want to go home. Well, we could go, take a break, adjust. No, I want to go home and stay there. Vax sniffled, standing more confidently. The sentinel paused. He hated when he was right. Fair enough. He shared a look with One, and he and Vax flashed away. The apartment seemed empty and eerily quiet. Even as the sentinel stood near Vax, it wasn't the same. Vax sat down on her couch and rested her head in her hands. I don't think you're safe alone, the sentinel began. It's hard to feel safe when you keep almost dying, Vax said. And what if it happens to me next? The sentinel shuffled his feet. It would save you. I don't want to be saved. That's what I'm afraid of. The sentinel sat at the table looking at his project, covered by a towel. But I'll respect your decision, and I'll be on my way. The sentinel put his hand on the towel. Vax looked up, intrigued. But I refuse to leave you alone. He pulled off the towel. I know how much you like the box. The sentinel unveiled a box, one almost exactly like his, but light purple and pink, instead of the usual orange and yellow. He tapped the top panel, lifting it into the air. He'll protect you. And you can contact me if you change your mind about all this. The Sentinel wiped his coat sleeve across his face. It's the same AI and everything. Is this what you've been working on? Vax asked as she stood. I knew you would come to your senses eventually. You can't keep jumping through time with me, especially when I don't know what I'm doing. This is a time machine and everything? I trust that you'll use it for emergencies. If you need me, find me. Vax paused before finally saying, Thank you. Really. She couldn't bring herself to hug the stranger she thought she knew so well. She looked at the Sentinel with a look both of them understood, and the Sentinel vanished.